So I'm going to start off with something that those who have been on the Akiva trip will appreciate. They'll appreciate the moment of it. And it is my way of segueing into how to approach the Elul, the Rosh Hashana, the Yom Kippur that's coming up. So, Akiva trip, for those who are watching on Torah Anytime and other platforms, the Akiva trip is a trip where people who come with various backgrounds, they come to Israel or sometimes to Poland as well. They come to learn and grow and feel more their connection with the Almighty. And part of what I'm hoping is that people will want to invest more of their time after the trip to learn more about their Judaism, because the truth is, a week in Poland or 2 weeks in Israel, while it's definitely time well spent, it's hard to really say that that's going to be the feather in the cap that we're wearing on our head the rest of our lives. We need something more substantial, and we need to own our own personal investment. And that's my hope. My hope is that it's a taste. It's a tam. The word for taste and reason is the same word in Hebrew. The tam l'davar, the taste, a little taste. But there's much more to it. So it was on the last trip, and the trip was, I would say, 2/3 of the way through. We were at the Bedouin tents, which means that we were going to spend 5 days in first camping out there in the south, then going up to Tiberias, to Tiberia, then going to Tzfat for Shabbat, and then the trip winds down. And I was speaking to some of the students at the dinner, which is usually a very nice dinner in the Bedouin tents. And I was speaking with them, and the feedback that I was getting was, wow, Rabbi, this has been a really nice trip. It's been nice. There's something, an idea I could take from it. And we were going around the table, and, we had broken up into different tables, and I was at one table with maybe 7 or 8 students. And hearing their feedback confirmed to me that I didn't feel like I was getting through to my students. And the trip was 2/3 of the way through. And to be honest, it was my second trip of the summer. And I also hadn't been feeling that great on the trip. And maybe I was not giving the students my everything. I thought maybe I could be giving more, and because of that, the message wasn't getting through the way I had hoped. I needed it to be alive, and I didn't feel it was alive. So at the dinner in the Bedouin tents, I went around to each table and I said, I'm going to be giving a short talk in another room right adjacent to the dining room. Everyone, please finish up dinner and go into that room. And I'd never done this before. Usually we go from the dinner, we go to find out how the Bedouins make their coffee, and that's very nice. And then we have a bonfire, and the whole thing is very lovely. But I never quite did this. And the students, they came into the room, and I looked at the students there, and I said, you know what? I want to tell you something. I feel like I'm failing you. I feel like what you have come for, I have not provided. There is so much in my heart, and I need to give it over, and I feel that time is running out. I can hear the ticking of the clock. And then I told the students, we're here in the Bedouin tents, and there's a lot of birthright groups who are here. And they have come because they wanted to enjoy Israel, and they're going to do the same thing we will tonight. Basically, they'll go stargazing. They'll have a barbecue. They'll have a bonfire. I told my students, and then they're going to go on, and many of them, the truth is, most of them are going to go on to live not just secular lives, but they'll probably intermarry, and their kids, or almost certainly their grandkids, won't even identify as Jewish. And I told my students the statistics of how many Jews today in America identify as Jews whose grandparents, whose great-grandparents were Jewish. And as I said it, I began to cry. And it was a little bit of a shocking moment, I guess, for myself, because I wasn't expecting to do that. And the students were sitting there with their jaws dropped. And it was a turning point in the trip, I feel. And the urgency that I wasn't able to express in the first 2/3 of the trip, and we had some great times, and singing, and a beautiful Havdalah, and Shiurim, we did all of that, but that urgency only came through when I was as authentic as I was able to be. And not just go through the motions of, okay, this is what an Akiva trip looks like, but to actually speak my heart. So, because of that, I figured we'll start off with this idea. We'll start off with the urgency of the month of Elul. There's a certain urgency. And I'm going to describe to you what that urgency is. We have a finite number of Eluls in our life. Elul is the precursor for the Day of Judgment. This is when we prepare ourselves. We sit down with our lawyers, we formulate our arguments, we decide how we're going to dress when we're in court, how we should look up, look down, stare the jury in the face, look down, look contrite, look remorseful, look defiant. We're preparing. There's a lot of preparation that goes on because the day of Rosh Hashana is the day of judgment, and we need to be prepared. We don't want to wing it when we come to court. We really want to know what we're doing, and we want to have a really good, clear picture of how that's going to look. And we have a finite number. You know, thank God I'm 54 years old, and the number has been dwindling every year. That's how life works. And there are some Eluls where I really feel like, okay, I'm putting in the due diligence. And sometimes in Elul, the month of Elul, this month, I feel like, you know what? Time is ticking and I'm not feeling the urgency. I'm not getting it yet. And I don't know how to wake myself up. And I don't want it to be contrived. I don't want it to be fake. I want to really feel the moment that's coming up. I want to feel the magnitude of what it means to stand staring at my deeds of the past year. What it means when the Creator looks at me and says, Klatzko, you're getting older. Let's see what kind of year you deserve. It could be a year of blessing. It could be a year of goodness. It could be a year of health, a year of nachas, a year of bounty, or God forbid, the other kind of year. And if I really, really believed that that's what's at stake, of course, everything would change. Everything would. So what's happening is that since I go through the same ritual year after year, and I'm used to the high holiday period coming, and I hear the shofar, and I dip the apple in the honey, I'm used to it. So after a while, I stop looking at it like, wow, everything is riding on me getting this right. After a while, it just becomes rote. And that's very scary because I know that when the high holidays are upon me, I will feel it. I know that when I'm standing in shul on Yom Kippur with my kittel on, I know I'm going to feel it. Whether I prepared for it or not, I know I'm going to feel it. And then I'm going to regret why I wasted a month before. Everyone feels it. You come into Yom Kippur, you hear the Chazan singing Kol Nidre, you scream Hashem, Hashem, Kira. Everyone feels it to some degree. But when we wait that long to feel it, and then we tell God, I'm going to change, but we haven't worked on changing until then, it may seem disingenuous. It may seem insincere. So why don't we just say, okay, you know what? These are things I want to change. Why wouldn't we do that? And the simple answer is that we've done it before and it hasn't worked. We've resolved to do certain things in our life, whether it was Shabbat or Kashrut, or not speaking Lashon Hara, or learning more. We've resolved, and it lasted perhaps some time, and then it dissolved. From resolve to dissolve, it dissipates. And we don't have confidence that it's going to change. And we know that God knows the future. So we make these calculations in our mind and say, wow, I'm going before a God who knows that even though I say I'm going to change, he knows I'm not going to. So why stand there as a bold-faced liar, as somebody who's a hypocrite, and say I'm going to change when God knows I'm not going to? I may as well just say I can't. Because I'm speaking to God. It's not like a person I can convince them I'm going to change. Give me another chance. But God knows the reality. So why pretend I'm fooling God? I'm actually being righteous because I'm being honest in front of God. I'm acknowledging God knows me and knows the future. So he knows I'm not going to hold on to it. So why bother? That's the battle that goes on inside of our minds. Since we're standing in front of someone who's omnipotent, who's omniscient, who knows, understands, I can't fake it. And I can't fake myself. So I want to share with you the most difficult question we ask ourselves on a daily basis. It's actually the hardest question, and it is the question that we ask ourselves again and again and again throughout our lives. And the question is, what is my value? Do I have value? I look in the mirror. Am I a valuable person? What's my value? So I come into a room and I have a good voice. So my value is my voice. I'm a good singer. That's my value. I'm a good looking guy. That's my value. I'm very clever. I'm very smart. I have a high IQ. That's my value. I'm a doer. I get things done. That's my value. Throughout our lives, we walk around daily, hourly, every minute, questioning, what's my value? Am I a good husband? Am I a good wife? Am I a good friend? What's my value? It's the scariest question that we can possibly ask ourselves. What is our value? The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, has a beautiful tactic to get us to mess up in our lives. And the tactic is to tell us, you don't really have value. You eat, you drink, be quite merry, because tomorrow you'll be dead and no one will remember you. And you'll have a tombstone, and that tombstone will be weathered, and the letters will be erased, and it will be illegible in 200 years, and in 1,000 years from now, it will be as if you never existed on earth. So you may as well do what you want, have the enjoyment that you want, because you have no value. For us to think that we have no value is the scariest thing that we could confront. It's one of the reasons that when we think about the magnitude of the universe and how many millions and billions of light years across the whole thing is, that it can cause us to lose hope, to devalue ourselves. Out of all the galaxies out there, hundreds of billions, maybe trillions of galaxies, and each one of them with hundreds of billions of stars, and there are almost an infinite number of planets around those stars. God cares about me, one of 8 billion people wandering around for a few years on earth? How does God care about me? I have no value. So our value comes from other people. You have a good voice. You're strong. When I look in the mirror, I give myself value, even though what I'm attributing value to are more character traits that I have versus my integral self. You know, this past week, Queen Elizabeth passed away. And what's really interesting is there was a lot of mourning out there. And, you know, whenever you happen to see this video on whatever platform you're watching, just be aware that this was the week that she passed away. And what's interesting is that although there are many, many people, really the world over, who are mourning the death of this monarch, the reality is she had no power. She couldn't execute anyone. She couldn't start a war. She was really a figurehead whose job was to go like this and to go to charitable events. And yet, the world appreciated having a Queen Elizabeth. And I was thinking, you know, this is the kind of thing I think about a lot. Like, so what exactly? So she was a monarch. Isn't the entire idea of a monarchy an archaic notion? It's died in much of the world. America doesn't even have a monarch. Why would we even care about a monarch? And I'll tell you why I think it speaks to the average person. The monarchy, at least in Great Britain, is the concept that God endowed a person with special divinity, special godliness. They are ordained. They are consecrated. Not because they're strong and not because they're pretty. They are just ordained because God likes people. So, in this monarchy, God ordains a queen. But we are charmed by the notion that you don't need money to wield power. She does have a lot of money. The royal family has plenty of money. But it's not the money that gave her the power. And it's not making policy. Judaism believes the following. Judaism believes that every single person, particularly every Jewish person, is a monarch. Every person is royalty. Every person is ordained by God. It's a notion that we have a hard time with because we connect royalty or status to power. Power and status are connected hand in hand. So if you have a billionaire, rules over a company, comes into a restaurant, gets the best seat. The reason he's being shown status is because he's got money. The money and power, or someone's a famous actress. So she comes in to an event and people go over and the paparazzi take pictures of her. It's this that creates that. Just being ordained with divinity for the sake of being ordained with divinity is a foreign notion, certainly in the United States. There's got to be a reason. Now, the truth is, today with Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok, you could be royalty because you have a lot of followers, a lot of likes. But even that, you got to earn it, or you can buy likes. You know, there's a way of earning it. You can't just be royalty because you're royalty. But in Judaism, you could be royalty because God made you. And if God made you, that answers that eternal question that you keep asking yourself. What's my value? When you walk around and you feel down about yourself, you forget that you're a prince or princess. Which means that every one of your days is a day filled with royal obligation to represent, to bask, to shine, to glow, to sparkle. That's your job. Your job is to represent God on high. And it's not because you're strong or clever or good looking. And it's not your accomplishments on a resume. And it's not how long your LinkedIn is and how many friends you have. It's you for you. And you for you is royalty. And we got a glimpse of it this week when Queen Elizabeth had all these millions of people who were mourning her. Yes, she represented well from World War II and how she gave encouragement. But who are you to give encouragement? You're not sending people into battle. You're a figurehead. You're not. Your royalty is not connected to your power. It's an example of how royalty can stand by itself without needing to be connected to fame or power or glory or status. That's an amazing idea. That's why we make a bracha over a king or a queen. It's a very, very big deal to be able to just walk around saying I'm royalty. If you can do that, then you understand that royalty gets a second chance. And that every day that you act as a king or queen is a stand-alone accomplishment. So it's true, Hashem knows that eventually you're going to mess up. Well, yes, Hashem knows it. Just like when I wake up my children to come to go to shul or to go to school, I don't think for a moment that from now on the rest of their lives they're going to wake up on time. I don't think so. There'll be days that they don't wake up. And I have to nudge them and wake them and like, come on, let's go. That doesn't make the day that they woke up less of an accomplishment. Today was an accomplishing day. You woke up on time. Okay, maybe tomorrow you're not going to wake up on time. But today you did. Thumbs up for you. You represented Hashem. You're awesome. So that's the first thing to understand. Every single day is a worthy accomplishment, and not because you have any status as far as your power, not because of your prestige, just because you're born into royalty. In Pirkei Avos it says, Chavivin Adam shenivru b'tselem Elokim. People are considered dear because they're created in the image of God. That's it. That's all you needed to do. And then, it says in the Mishnah, Chavivin Yisrael shenikru banim lamakom. The Jewish people are extra special because they're called children of God. Now, let's speak a little bit about how we approach Elul. So, in Elul, we start doing things that show that we're on our way to Teshuvah. And as Elul and Rosh Hashana come closer, we have simanim, which means signs. Let's speak about those signs. We'll blow a shofar. Each day, each morning now we're actually blowing shofar, not just on Rosh Hashana. We're going to dip things in honey to show it's so sweet. On Rosh Hashana we're going to eat the head of a fish, or the head of a keves, of a lamb. We're going to do a simanim. We're going to eat a pomegranate. It's got lots of seeds. We should have lots of zchuyot, lots of merits. But one thing we can't forget is that at the end of the day, it's not about the signs, but it's about the change in action. Let me tell you a little story. There was a husband and a wife who were going on vacation to Cancun. They had a glorious time, and they come back 2 weeks later only to find that their house has been broken into and lots of their items, personal items, have been stolen. And they were distraught. They lost family heirlooms. They lost things that were priceless. And the wife turns to the husband and said, "You were the last one in the house. Did you make sure that the house was secure? Did you make sure the windows were closed?" "Yes." "Did you lock the windows?" "Yes." "Did you set the alarm?" "Absolutely." "Did you have the video cameras going?" "Yes, I did." "Did you call the alarm company?" "Yes, I did." And then she's thinking, what? How did they get in? And then all of a sudden, she thinks to herself and says, "1 second, did you close the front door?" Ay, ay, ay. I forgot. He did everything but closed the front door. So you know what they did? They waltzed into the front door and they took what they wanted. Sometimes we can do every little nitty-gritty thing. We'll lock the windows and we'll call the alarm company and we'll get fingerprints and we'll have the lights on, the timers turning off and on at night. But if we don't close the front door, if we don't do the basics, the Yetzer Hara is going to walk in and wreak havoc. So we're going to do these simanim. These simanim are very important. But we have to understand that it's the actions. The closing the front door can mean closing our mouths, not speaking lashon hara, not saying things that are dishonest, not speaking something called nivul peh, which is things that are disgusting, that we shouldn't be speaking about. We should be refined. We should be princes and princesses on our trip. Those of you that were on our Akiva trip, one of the rules that we start off with is no swearing on the trip. And one of the people on our last trip says he loved that we started off with that rule. It set the tone for the kind of group this is going to be. And he's a teacher, and he came back and he said on the very first day, he made that one of the rules. No cussing. He said that was very meaningful to him. No cursing. It's a big deal. So that's point number one. Now we're going to hear the shofar. And the shofar is supposed to wake us up. But we need to understand in a deeper way the shofar. So I'm going to tell you a nice story. There was a man, and he came to a town, and in this town, where he was staying for a little bit, there was a fire. And he sees this fire, and this is again in the 1800s, before telephones, before cars. Here's he sees this fire, it's burning in one of the houses, and all of a sudden, people went outside and they began to blow on their horns. And one horn led to another horn, and soon the fire department of those days came with their water and they put out the fire. And the person said, wow, I get how that works. When there's a fire, blow on the horns, the fire department comes and it puts out the fire. I got to bring that to my town where I live. I'm going to bring this great idea. And he tells his town when he returns that in the town he had just come from, when there's a fire, they blow horns and it puts out the fire. And the next time there was a fire in town, everyone came and they began to toot on their horns. And they blew their horns and they're blowing and the fire is raging and the fire goes from one house to the next, and soon the whole town is burnt down. And as it's burning, they're blowing their horns, doo, doo, and they're confused. We don't get it. We're blowing the horn. Why isn't the fire going out? It makes no sense. We're blowing our horns. He goes back to the other town and says, I don't get it. When you blew your horns, the fire went out. We blew our horns and the whole fire blew. And the whole town burnt down. So the person from this other town said, of course, silly. It's not the horns that put out the fire. The horns are just a reminder. They're just a sign. They're a symbol. They're a calling for the fire department to come and put out the fire. But if you just blow horns, nothing's going to happen. And so with Rosh Hashana coming up, and we listen to that shofar, and there's an art form, by the way, to listening to shofar. You don't just listen to shofar. There's a way to listen to shofar, where you close your eyes and you listen and you let that sound penetrate your heart in the deepest way. It's an art form. You have to listen to that sound and picture in your mind your heart being ripped into two and shaken to its core. And if you do it right, if you could visualize it, then the shofar will actually work. It will work. It'll shake you to your core. But it's not the shofar that makes the tshuva. The shofar is just there to remind us that there are things that we need to change in our lives. But if we just listen to shofar, but we continue the same as we did before, then it's nothing. It does nothing. It's blowing a shofar and it's blowing a trumpet or horn, and the whole town burns down. I'm going to tell you a story. So, I enjoy art. I collect art. And one day I'm bidding in an auction. It was a live auction. I was bidding online. And my wife comes in and she says, well, she wants to speak to me about something. I said, can you give me one more minute? There's 1 minute left to the auction. We're bidding. Okay, we won. And she looks at me and she says, oh, amazing. What did we win? I said, I don't know if you're going to understand. You don't say that to your wife. I don't know if you'll understand. She said, tell me. She said, are you sure? She said, look, anything you buy, I bought also, right? So what did we buy just now? I said, okay, I'll tell you. We just bought a hair clippers. It's a hair clippers. It's not an electric one. It works with almost like a scissor action, but it's a clippers, and it's a clippers that comes from Auschwitz. And it's marked off with the Auschwitz markings. It was one of the clippers that were used to clip the hair of the prisoners before they were gassed. And we would take, I would take those clippers, and I wanted to own that pair. That's why I bid on it. And she said, why would we want clippers from Auschwitz? It's sort of a morbid thing to own. So I said to her, you know how we eat honey together with our bread, our challah, with an apple on Rosh Hashana? You know how we do that? We actually have honey every week. In my family, we have honey every week. Right? Just like we want a sweet new year, we also want a sweet new week. Well, how does that work? We want the sweet new week, so I'm eating honey. So honey is sweet, so my year is going to be sweet? How does that work? The answer is that a siman, a sign, is actually a tefillah. A sign is a prayer. When I eat an apple and honey, I'm not just eating something sweet. I'm acknowledging that, Hashem, you're the source of sweetness. And I know that if I want a sweet new year, I have to turn to you. So a sign that you're the one that I need to turn to is by dipping an apple or bread into honey. It's not the apple and honey, it's the tefillah, Hashem. Just like honey is sweet, so too you're the one that creates sweetness. Please give me a beautiful and sweet new year. A siman is a tefillah. A siman is a tefillah. And everything that we do on Rosh Hashana, which are known as the simanim, sher yirbu zechuyosenu kirimon, that our merit should be as numerous as seeds are in a pomegranate. That's a tefillah. Hashem, scrutinize my actions and uncover my hidden good motivation that maybe even I wasn't aware of. Shenifra v'nirba kedagim, let me be fruitful and multiply like a fish that has many, many children. Let me have many children as well. It's a tefillah. I said, we have a time called the 3 weeks. And during the 3 weeks, we don't cut our hair. We mourn the destruction of the temple. The 3 weeks happened a few weeks ago. We don't cut our hair. We're in mourning. We're sad. And when the 3 weeks are over, we get to cut our hair again. And very often I don't have a beard. And therefore, those 3 weeks when the stubble begins to grow in, it's a little bit painful. The skin's not used to it. And I'm really excited to be able to shave. The problem is, it's a little bit disingenuous. It's missing meaning. You know why? Because we went through 3 weeks and the Beis HaMikdash is still not built. We went through Tisha B'Av and yet the Sinas Chinam, the baseless hatred remains. And Hashem may look at me, may look at us and say, Klatzko, what are you so happy about the fact that you could shave, that you could take a haircut? You haven't solved anything. You haven't accomplished anything. All of a sudden, like, oh, wash my hands, all done, all finished. So that's why I bought these clippers. It's true. It's true. I am shaving. I am taking a haircut after the 3 weeks. But my first haircut, I used these clippers. The very first clip, I used these clippers. Because I want to tell Hashem the following. It's true that we haven't rectified everything we need to. But it's also true that we haven't abandoned you. It's also true that we have been like sheep to slaughter. Uv'chol zos shimcha lo shachachnu na'al tishkachenu. With everything we've been through, we haven't forgotten you. Look at these clippers. Look what I'm cutting my hair with. We've been through Auschwitz. And still we believe in you. And still we pay allegiance to you. And still you're our God and we're your children. Na'al tishkachenu. Please don't forget us. It's a tefillah. That's why I bought these clippers. And there's deep tefillahs that go on in our simonim before Rosh Hashana. Interesting, when we eat the head of a fish and we say, let us be the head, guess what is interesting about the head of that fish? It's severed from the body. We want to be the head. We want to be the light unto the nations. And what have the nations done? They've severed us. Yeah, you're the head. You're the severed head. You're the head that's dangling. You're the headless horse. Like you're just all by yourself. And Hashem, we say, we want to be the head, even though the pain of trying to be a light unto the nations has been nothing but scorn and ridicule and persecution. That's the deeper tefillah. It's a game-changing idea. We don't want just want to be the head. We want to be the head even through the difficulties. We want to have many children even though they've killed our children. Even though 1.5 million children were slaughtered by the Nazis. We still pray, Shenifra v'nirbe kedagim. People say to me, how many children do you have? My students used to say, how many children do you have? I say, 11, thank God, 11 children. And I've had children say, Rabbi, aren't you worried about overpopulation? Like, slow down, Rabbi. Overpopulation, 11 kids. When are you going to stop? And I tell my students, you know when I'll stop? I'll stop at 6 million. That's when I'm going to stop. Not until every Jew has been replaced. Because that's our tefillah. Share yirbu zechliyoseinu. We want our deeds to multiply. Because our deeds mean we're connected to Hashem. And we have shown the light of Torah to the world. Okay, let's be practical. So, great. We want to get close to you, Hashem. We are children of royalty. We represent. We are ordained. We've been coronated. We've been designated. We are royalty. But I don't feel like royalty. Okay, I'm going to make commitments and eventually they're going to dissolve. Okay? Every day is by itself something unique, something special, something powerful. But I need motivation to get to that first step. So I want to go through a mind exercise with you. Forget about waiting for the motivation to change. Sometimes we feel like we need motivation to change. We need something to shake us up. Something dramatic, something traumatic. Something that will remind us of life and death. But instead, practice the following. Ask yourself the following question. If you were motivated, let's say you were, what would be the first thing you would want to change? Let's say you were motivated. You're not motivated. Good. But let's say you were. What would be the thing you would change if you were motivated? What's the first thing? And take that thing and say, you know what, Hashem? I'm going to do something even better than changing because I'm motivated. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change when I'm not motivated. I'm going to improve something without the motivation just because I want to get close to you. And I'm not thinking about death. I'm not thinking about Yom HaMitzah. I'm not even thinking about Yom HaDin. Okay, I'm not there yet. I'm not in the mindset of Kol Nidre. But I want to change because I love you. It's not out of fear. It's going to be out of love. And then eventually I'm going to get to that point where I'll be motivated and maybe I'll take on more things. But what would I do had I been motivated? That's what to focus on. If I'd be more careful about Shmiras Einayim, which means what I look at when I'm motivated to change. So do it now. Do it now when you're not motivated. It's 100 times more noteworthy. It's 100 times more meritorious if you could change when you're not motivated than when you are. Lots of people are motivated when they see nisim and niflos. A lot of people are. That's great. It should be that way. Only the great people are motivated out of principle. That's what we can do. That's the crown jewel of connection to Hashem. My wife asked me to do something. I'm not understanding the logic. And maybe I'm not even feeling the love right now. Neither of them. Not the love, not the logic. But it means something to her, so I'm going to do it nonetheless. That's huge. And with that zchus, in that merit, we're going to be motivated. Because we have a rule, chitzonius ma'orer es apnimius. Outwardly showing our desire to change has the amazing ability to motivate within us the desire to change. So we have a shortcut, we have a life hack in how to change. What a relief. Until now I thought I have to wait until I'm motivated. Now I realize the opposite. If I could change when I'm not motivated, then, oh my goodness, by the time motivation comes, I'm ahead of the game. And I've proven that I'm willing to do it out of love for Hashem. It's the opposite of how we always look at it. I wait to be shaken up, and I don't have to wait. The change is waiting for me right now. So that's how to do it. And then the last point that we'll make. The last point, we always speak about baby steps. Baby steps. It's like a famous thing in outreach, or your parents, your rabbi will say, take baby steps. If you take very large steps, you're not going to be able to hold on to it. You're going to fall. Okay, we all know the concept of baby steps. But think about a baby taking baby steps. When a baby takes a baby step, think about it just from a baby's point of view. Does a baby expect to fall? If you look at a baby's face when it realizes it can walk, it is so excited. Every time it walks, it is convinced it's going to walk. And then it plops on the floor. And then it gets up all excited, its hands are bouncing. It is convinced it's going to walk. The beauty of baby steps are not that you're going to fall. The beauty is that each time you think, this is the time I'm going to walk. And eventually the baby walks. And the baby doesn't give up. And even though you as the wizened adult, you as the parent look and says, oh, that's so cute. It took 1 step, it took 2 steps. Okay, it's going to fall. It's going to take time. But the baby doesn't know that. The baby gets up, says, this is the time. So when I tell you take baby steps, yeah, take small steps, but take optimistic steps. Take steps with those bright eyes of a winner, those bright eyes of somebody who is convinced and can convince himself, and maybe even to the point of convincing God, as if that were possible, that this time is for real. And if you keep doing it, one of these times you're going to walk. I'm going to wish you each a beautiful Rosh Hashana, a meaningful, Yom Kippur, an Elul of growth, not because you're inspired, but a growth because you're principled, because you're royalty. And if you grow one day, if you grow 1 hour, and then you fall, that hour is in the books. No one can take it away from you. If you grow in a day, it gets put in a lockbox. It's put away from you for oilam haba, oilam vayed. It's always yours that day. Even if you fell, a tzaddik will fall 7 times and get up. You're the kind of people, hopefully I'm the kind of person who can fall, but like a baby, I get up again with bright eyes and say, I'm going to do it this time. And then one of these times, it's really going to happen. Thank you so much.
As he walked into the room so silently, all were sitting contemplating destiny. The Maspid begins to speak, his voice so frail and weak, to all of his bereaved family. The Nifter was beloved by everyone. Some called him father, others called him son. Whoever thought we'd see the day when hours past we'd have to pay, and this journey through life would be done. Very soon the chapel hall begins to fill. Everyone is quiet, sitting all so still. The rabbi begins to say in his unique and gentle way, Hashem, we know that this is your will. The Nifter was known for giving charity. He built a home and raised a Jewish family. But when everything unfolds, who knows what the future holds? Will his life stand up to deep scrutiny? As the final shovel load of lost count. I know the lessons from this day must learn. For each person comes a time I must begin to prepare for mine. So I will not be ashamed from my past. And the next time that I go to shul to pray, to Hashem I express my love in a whole new way. I want to turn my life around, because in you all hope is found, to be judged righteous on my final day. So listen close to what I'm telling you. Every word is true and engraven in your heart. Start your faith by everything you say, and God bringing you the way, and it's not too late to start. So do teshuva.